Now, the probe looked into controversial methods which the CIA used to extract information from detainees. Waterboarding and humiliation took place at infamous prisons like Guantanamo Bay in Cuba and Abu Ghraib in Iraq. Some captives also endured painful stress positions for hours and were deprived of sleep. Ahead of the release, the US has beefed up security at its government and military facilities right around the world, fearing a violent backlash. For more, let's bring in Ann Wright, retired US Army colonel. Well, the long-delayed report has finally been released. How big are its revelations?
Well, we don't know for sure how big they are because the majority of the report, as you've mentioned, is still being kept from us, the American people, and from the world at large. But certainly the executive summary, the 500 pages, detail things that we as Americans are very ashamed of. And the backlash, as you mentioned, I also was a U.S. diplomat, served 16 years as a U.S. diplomat in places all over the world, U.S. embassies, which are now beefing up their security. And it's one of the things that, of course, when any program is initiated by the CIA or the military, they certainly ought to think about the long-term consequences if it's found out about, which now the CIA torture program is becoming more clear to us, and there will be outrage around the world, I would think.
Well, just on that, we already knew about waterboarding and other torture tactics in Guantanamo. Now we know these brutal methods were used elsewhere in the world in secret CIA prisons. What type of international reaction do you believe we're going to get here?
I would suspect that many embassies will have protesters out in front of them, and I would think that right here in the United States that we will have some protests too. We've had them in the past in terms of trying to get accountability for our own government actions, actions that many of us feel have been criminal actions, that there needs to be accountability for it. And just because the Senate issues this report, that's one step in finding out a little more about it. But now the next step is accountability.
Who is going to be kept
people are held accountable for their actions. Well, that's the good point. And how far up will it go? Will it go to the director of the CIA? Will it go to the vice president, the president? Will it go to the Department of Justice and attorneys who changed the law, really wrote a different law, and then got Congress to pass it in order to protect people who are already committing criminal acts?
Now, the full document remains classified. Do you think that the summary that's being published is actually enough?
Never. No, we need to know the entire 6,000 pages, and we're hoping that Senator Mark Udall, who is a senator who is leaving the Senate within a month, that maybe he will read the entire report on the floor of the U.S. Senate, similar to what Senator Mike Gravel did for the Pentagon Papers nearly 45 years ago.
Is this report to the CIA, in your opinion?
Well, I think this is a damning report to the CIA. It certainly shows criminal acts that were being committed. And in order to prevent them happening in the future, we definitely need to have a wider explanation. We need to see the entire 6,000 pages. And the redacted parts, parts that are marked out, they need to come to the surface so that those who have committed these criminal acts can be held accountable.
Ann Wright, retired U.S. Army colonel, thank you for speaking to us this hour.